How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Yes, you should be listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast, Detroit's premier sports podcasting network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz? Welcome to this week's podcast, bro.
Have you ever had a moment where you just thought out loud? Like it popped in your brain and then just fell out of your mouth and you said it kind of loud?
Nope.
No?
Not recently.
Let me rewind this to, was that Monday? No, Tuesday afternoon. So I'm at work, and you know I work at the gym. It's the other job I have. I'm like a Jamaican. I got 15 of these things. Anyways, so I'm at the gym, and this cute broad, she's all done working out, and I like had noticed her when she walked in, but I thought she was with her boyfriend, so I didn't want to stare and leer at her creepily like I normally do. So I let her go by, whatever, go about my business. I'm cleaning some stuff. I notice her in the back stretching and doing whatever else chicks do. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever, no big deal. And then I go back up to the front, and I'm working the desk. And then she's going to leave. And when she's going to leave, I was like, man, it just like something about her, dude. She looked so good. She has this little like stud in her nose. Thought it was like super hot. And she just had like ass for days. And I was like, Jesus Christ. And I was like, as she was walking out, I was like, Daddy likes. And I said it loud enough to where she kind of stopped and turned. And I was like, oh, damn. That really just happened, huh?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What was it like the moment you realized you locked eyes and you said, oh, no, I think I said that out loud?
Well, she just kind of looked, and then she just kept it moving. And I was like, well, what are you going to do? Maybe I'll see her tomorrow. Bro. Maybe I won't. Yeah, that really happened.
Bro. You can't be like
that.
No,
I know. It's horrible, dude. It's horrible. Like, just like stuff pops in my head sometimes and just falls out of my mouth. Prime example.
Oh, my God.
Exactly. That was my thought. I was like, oh, geez, not good. The worst part was my manager was standing by, and she was oblivious to all of it, so I got lucky there. But, yeah, it's like I'm like a walking sexual harassment case, honestly, especially when I'm at the gym. I have taco neck all day long. Chicks walk around in yoga pants. Good God, somebody help me. It's not good, man. There's some broad who comes in, she's like a 10. Like, I don't know how you take a 10-piece and you turn it into like a 12 and a half, but like she goes, works out, and then she'll come out of the bathroom, and next thing you know, dude, she looks amazing. Like, I don't even know how she gets all that ass in those jeans either. I don't understand it. Oh, and she smells great too.
I don't sound like this.
I know, I'm a creep. It's cool.
It's one of those things, cuz, where it's okay. Your inner thoughts just have to stay inner, and we got to work on that as a goal.
They pop out, though. They're like a boner. They just pop out.
Obviously, more important question is, does she work out in like, what do you call it, one of those nice outfits, or what does she work out in?
Yoga pants.
Yoga pants.
Which are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The other day, so this is the first time I've ever noticed her. She normally comes in like after my shift is over. She was wearing like a shirt that was kind of tight around the top, but kind of flowy at the like after her upper chest area. So now I'm trying to clean this up and make it sound presentable. So like after her boobs, it was flowy. There we go. Is that better?
I like the women that work out in their tank tops.
Oh, those I got one of those, dude. There's one of those. Like she looks like she was a dancer. Like her body is tight and firm everywhere. And she wears like the tightest yoga pants, and all she wears is a sports bra. And it's just like, yes, thank God for today. Thank you.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. And then you're just like, you find anything you have to clean that's like near her, just so you can like. I sound like a total creep here.
I have to warn you.
Total creep alert.
As this stuff falls out of my mouth, I'm just like, this is what happens, man. This is what happens in real life when I'm at work. I just sit there and I just start talking, and just bad things fall out. Jesus Christ.
Oh, man.
Let's move this along.
All right. We got a huge podcast. Doc and Jock, episode 252. Thank you so much for downloading. We're going to talk about the Pistons and the Michigan connection, college football in the second segment. We'll finish out this podcast talking about the Detroit Tigers, their draft selection. But the biggest news, I guess, of the week is people were shocked. Everybody, it kind of came out of left field, and that's why It's called a Woj bomb when Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN kind of has a tweet. Everybody pays attention, and you just got to be careful because there's a lot of clowns out there on Twitter that like to say that they're Adrian to put out false rumors, and it's funny when actual legitimate media members fall for it and they respond to it. But a real Woj bomb happened late last week when it was revealed that John Beilein was a candidate that was being interviewed by the Detroit Pistons. And when I heard it, I wasn't as shocked as many people were. And I said, okay, you know what? Maybe Tom Gores is serious. He knows that a lot of the selections that realistically he could go for aren't going to happen. Why not interview an up-and-coming mind in college basketball, an individual with a system that really has played well? You have to take notice of John Beilein and what he did at Michigan. I mean, that team was able to shoot the three, and many people noticed, myself included, people were asking, how do you get these athletes? It seems like a three-point system. It seems like everybody at Michigan can knock down the three with solid efficiency. So what are you doing? And people have recognized that he put something in place so that many of the athletes could succeed. And so people are speculating, could that system maybe even translate to the NBA? And now you keep hearing that maybe it's not just a quick hit interview, that John Beilein might be going out to LA to talk to Tom Gores, that they've had repeated talks, and it might be a situation in which he might be legitimately offered a chance to coach the Pistons. It seems like right now, as we're talking, he's in the top three, and he might have a legitimate chance, but Michigan Nation, man, they were butthurt when they heard this. They were pissed. They were like, why? They kind of dismissed it. Many people still say anybody talking about it is just talking about it for clickbait, for attention, that realistically there's no chance of this happening. But I like the Pistons for going out and doing this.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that was most interesting about this entire story was the news came out and it broke late Friday. They had met earlier Thursday. And since then, John Beilein's already had another interview or two. That's probably the most telling thing about this. He's a legit candidate here. This is a guy that the Pistons are looking to do something new, looking to do something a little bit different, and I tip my hat to them. I think they've royally screwed up this entire coaching search and the whole thing with the GM. It's been a total mess since day one. The day the Pistons season ended, they should have sat there and fired Stan Van Gundy. Instead, they drugged their feet for 2 weeks. Then they made a decision on Stan Van Gundy. And then they drugged their feet for another week. And then they brought in Ed Stefanski. And then Ed Stefanski went in and basically dusted two dudes out of the mothballs and then brought in another guy to sit there and help them evaluate who the next coach is going to be. This whole process has been brutal from day one. But going out and interviewing a guy like John Beilein, and you said it yourself, the offense he runs is very similar to what the NBA is becoming. It's a three-point shooting league. You look at the team that's in the finals right now. You look at the team that has won the last couple NBA championships, the Golden State Warriors. What do they lean on heavily? It's their ability to shoot the three. Now, I don't think the Pistons necessarily have the assets right now to do something like that. So this is going to be, if John Beilein is selected as the head coach, it's going to be a process.
See, I disagree with that. I tweeted out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. The team has shooters. You got Bullock. You got Stanley Johnson. You got Luke Kennard. So if the system is in place to shoot more threes, you got to implement it so that these guys actually execute it.
You need guys to be able to rebound then.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't know. I mean,
Andre Drummond,
how many
Blake
rebounds
Griffin?
can Andre Drummond get?
25 a game? You know, this is a guy that can rebound.
Shots, dude.
And so I do think that's why when people say that the Pistons right now don't have it, I think the reason why Beilein is being heavily considered is, you know what? There are guys that if they could execute the three, you got Reggie Jackson, who's a high volume shooter. He can shoot the three. You got Bullock, you got Stanley Johnson, you got Luke Kennard. That's four players right there that if they have a system in place where maybe they got more open looks with the option of then going to Andre and Blake, I could see a system percolating where, you know, John Beilein and I kind of have a conversation and we got this system in place where, you know, the ball goes through Andre, kick it out to Blake. He's an option. Boom, boom. Some good passing, some good pick and rolls. Inside out game. You have some good ISO plays set up as well. And then you get the shooters open. I mean, Golden State done it. That's on tape.
You're absolutely right. If you look at the offense that Beilein runs, right, it's not just predicated on the three. It's a slashing type offense. It's an inside out game. You know, he doesn't utilize a traditional center. You're right. You make a good point there. My thought process is I don't know if I don't know if Blake and I don't know if Andre necessarily fit what he's looking to do. And going forward, I'm not 100% sure how those guys would match up in his offense. And I don't know how you can move them if he doesn't want them. That's kind of my concern. But I tip my hat to the Pistons for thinking outside the box, trying to look ahead. I think the most telling compliment that could be paid to John Beilein came from Brad Stevens. He said he's done an incredible job. No doubt he's one of the best coaches at any level in the world. He said this on Dan Dockich's show based out of Indianapolis. He said, like anybody else, to make the move to the NBA, it's not about how good the coach is. It's about the support it's about how supported he is. And that, I think, is where the crux of the issue comes. What is Tom Gores going to give to John Beilein? What is Ed Stefanski going to help John Beilein with? How are they going to help support him? What are you going to take into consideration what he's telling you guys he needs to run his offense? Or are you just going to go out there and just draft whoever you want to draft because you think it's going to put butts in seats? If you look at the whole thing with Blake Griffin, right? I didn't see how that fit. I didn't see how that worked out. I felt like that was a Tom Gores money move. If Stan Van Gundy signed off on that move, Stan Van Gundy's a bigger idiot than we all thought. That really felt like, to me, that wasn't Stan going out there saying, hey, we need to acquire this player. That, to me, felt like somebody contacted the Pistons and said, hey, we've got Blake available if you're interested. And Tom Gores is like, he's a superstar. No, bro, he's not. He's an often injured guy who's no longer in his prime. He's on the way out. He's got a foot halfway out the door right now. But you want to go get him because he used to be a superstar or he used to be a guy. He's a used to be, And it felt like it was a Tom Gores move. Never really felt like it was a Stan Van Gundy move. And that's the biggest issue I had with bringing Blake in, because I just didn't see how it fit the offense. So if they're going to listen to what John Beilein has to say and what he's telling him he needs for his offense to work and to be productive, the one thing you can say about John Beilein, too, is he's a hell of a coach. He doesn't go out there and doesn't get 5-star guys. Usually doesn't get very many 4-star guys. He's usually doing this with 3-star guys. We make the comparison all the time. John Beilein is very similar to Mark D'Antonio. He's not Jim Harbaugh. He's not going out there and getting 5-star and 4-star guys and the number 1 or the number 2 position player for his team. No, he's taking 2 and 3-star guys and developing them and making them either NBA or, in Mark D'Antonio's situation, NFL caliber players. And that's the one thing you can say about John Beilein. And I think NBA players, they do want to be coached. They want to have a coach who can sit there and help them get better at certain aspects of their game. They don't want a guy to come in there and be similar to Stan Van Gundy and berate them and be like, look, I don't know what Andre's doing out there. Andre sucks. He can't hit free throws.
What do you make of the reaction of some Michigan fans that are like, look, it's not serious. John Beilein may be doing this for leverage. Maybe he just wants to try and up the contract that he's got to discuss with Ward Manuel. I think it's serious. I think people are not really taking it as seriously as they could be.
They've got their head in the sand. And initially on Friday, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, this is just to sit there and up his contract. And then you look at what his contract is, and you look at what he's going to go to the NBA and make. Do you know what I'm saying? We're talking about the difference of maybe $1 million. Maybe. I don't think this is him sitting there trying to up a number or to become the highest paid college coach, in all of basketball. I don't think it's that. This is serious. This is legit. If it was just one interview, okay, cool. He's had at least two, and he's in the running with 2 other guys who are prime candidates, who are hot commodities right now in the NBA. So if you're a Michigan fan and you don't think that there's a chance that John Beilein is going to become the Pistons' next head coach, I think you've got another thing coming. I think you got to take a step back and you really got to look at what's going on here. John Beilein makes like $3.5 million a year. What does he need more money for? He doesn't. Do you know what I'm saying? He lives in Ann Arbor. You know how affordable Ann Arbor is to live in? Well, especially if you're making $3.5 million a year.
Do you think, and the part that's hard for me is, I don't see John Beilein being an ego guy, a guy that needs to go to the NBA to win a title. I feel like he's proven himself at every level that he's coached. Do you see him saying, well, I haven't really met the goals yet at Michigan in terms of winning it all, but I've taken a program and built it. Now, do I need a bigger challenge? Do I need to go to the NBA and try to prove it there? But there is some, notion of it's a little bit easier to have a general manager if and when the Pistons ever hire one, that you don't have to go out and recruit players. You don't have to, have a practice, have a game, have situations where you got to impress parents and kids, and you just show up make your $5 million, go home, and as well, you stay at the best hotels, eat at the best restaurants, you travel in luxury. It's a little bit of a nicer lifestyle when you're 65 years old. The grind of coaching college kids, it seems to be there, but I don't see Beilein wanting to coach the Pistons to fulfill some sort of lack of fulfillment. I think he's a good college coach, but I don't think he's trying to do this to fulfill ego. I think that it's an opportunity. Why not go out? If you know the owner's in L.A., he's got a mansion, maybe he'll invite you out there. You get to go on some jets. Why not be wined and dine? I think it's right to do, and I don't begrudge anybody for trying to better their situation. We all do it. We all take interviews. We all ask people, and we all look at situations that are out there. We're all always trying to advance the cause. And so for those that discount that, I do think you're burying your head in the sand. And I don't like the notion of the people saying that the Pistons shouldn't hire him because Michigan fan would then revolt and not go to Pistons game. I think that's ridiculous. You should support the man. It's the biggest accomplishment that the Michigan State owner goes out, surveys the landscape, and chooses the Michigan coach. I feel like you guys should take pride in ownership that, whoa, our guy is special. Our guy is worthy of big-time jobs, and really revere the man and actually go out there and support your team. Go out there to Chrysler and sell it out for an entire year. Show support and let the man feel the love.
I think this is the biggest tip of the cap to what John Beilein has been able to build and construct and do on the hardwood. John Beilein deserves all the accolades in the world. Do you remember when he came into Michigan? It was absolutely abysmal.
It was Izzo's house.
It was Izzo's house. It was horrible. And John Beilein has now got this team to where they're not, I don't look at them as being a national power, but I look at them as being a very competitive national program. I don't put them on the tiers of a Duke, a North Carolina, at this point, Villanova.
See, that comment's part of the problem. They are really nationally relevant.
No, they are nationally relevant, but I don't put them in the same tier as those schools. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because they haven't won it yet.
Yes. Yeah. They don't have, there's not the lineage that those programs have. But I do put them in that very next tier. I put them up there with the likes of, we'll say, what Louisville used to be, what Michigan State usually is. Do you know what I'm saying? They're up there. They're a very relative program. A Syracuse, even. I put them up there with a Syracuse or a Georgetown. You know, these are programs where,
right, it's fair to say.
You know what I'm saying? You're not the upper echelon, but he's taken a program from absolutely nothing to being completely irrelevant, to raising it up to where you're going to get a prime spot on a prime night on ESPN.
And some would argue
they're going to do their college basketball from Ann Arbor.
Yeah, and some would argue that his trek to where he's taken the program is harder because of all the sanctions, the reputation, where the Fab Five had left the program with Ed Martin and Steve Fisher going forward. It was tough, and that Brian Ellerby era was terrible, and it was just
Tommy Amaker.
That era of basketball was irrelevant.
Dude, I used to love Saturday afternoons watching Brian Ellerby just sweat so profusely on the sideline,
right.
Or Tommy Amaker wearing a suit coat and a high turtleneck sweater and just try to coach these guys.
And surprisingly, he's been at Harvard for over a decade.
Yeah.
And very rarely spoken about, at least in these parts. But I looked over and I read it, and I'm like, Tommy Amaker's still coaching.
Yes.
Still coaching the same place.
Yes.
So,
oh, man. Well, let me ask you this then, all right? Who would you prefer as head coach for the Pistons? Because right now, they basically have a big three of John Beilein, Dwayne Casey, and they've got the Spurs assistant coach. I'm going to hack this name all the heck. Ime Udoka. Did I get that right? Close enough. Can you give me?
That was not bad.
Yeah,
That's not bad at all. I think it's Ime Udoka.
Okay, cool.
Ime Udoka.
You say it from now on then.
Man, it's tough. So I read about him, and he's kind of a young cat, 40 years old. Many people believe he's the next up-and-coming coach. I don't know if he's just yet ready to take the Pistons job, but he's a leader in the clubhouse. He made the top three.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been Dwayne Casey, and I know people will say, well, what kind of success has he had in the playoffs? Look, if the Pistons can get to the playoffs 3 of the next 4 years, that's pretty good, as opposed to where they've been, where they've missed the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. So if Dwayne Casey can come in and stabilize the Pistons until they tear this thing down and get new players, I'm okay with that. But if you want to make a splash, and some signs are pointing to Udoka as being somebody that can be significant and might have the ability with Trajan Langdon to kind of work together because they do have a professional working relationship, then it could work. I'm okay if it's one of those two. If they take John Beilein, I won't be upset. I'll be definitely surprised. I'll be on board with it because I like the system. I like the fact that it could be exciting if it's along the nature of what the Golden State Warriors do. get that guy that can just can be lights out and shoot the three. But for me, I want it to be Dwayne Casey. If they announce it, Dwayne Casey, I'll be okay. I'm still going to be on board.
Yeah. See, I like Dwayne Casey, but I feel like he's a retread. And
he's the safest pick, and I think you need safe right now. I think you need
very safe pick.
You need safe right now. With that organization in flux, with the talent that they have.
Do you know what leads me to think that it's going to be Dwayne Casey? It's Ed Stefanski, right? Ed Stefanski hired him in Toronto. That was his guy. And Dwayne Casey sat there and he took a Toronto team that wasn't great and ended up building them up and got them to the playoffs. And really and truly, they've underdelivered the last 2 and 3 seasons in Toronto. So I think Dwayne Casey will probably be the pick because of Ed Stefanski. And the reason I say probably is I think Ed Stefanski is your new GM. I don't think it's been finalized. I don't think it's on the dotted line yet. But I think Ed Stefanski is going to somehow he's in here as the guy who's supposed to be in the lead executive guy who's going to help Tom Gores and kind of point Tom Gores in the right direction for basketball operations. Sounds like a general manager to me. Sounds like the guy who you want running your front office to me. And I think it's going to be Ed Stefanski who's going to be named your new general manager as soon as Dwayne Casey is named your head coach.
Now, I just shot a tweet out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and I'm fascinated as to what the response could be. If you're John Beilein, what 1 or 2 questions would you ask Tom Gores? You're sitting there, life of luxury. You're probably at Tom Gores' house, hopefully, if you get a chance to go to that massive compound that he calls a home out there in Beverly Hills. Or you're at a nice restaurant. You know that Gores is going to float the bill. You're ordering your caviar. You get your champagne. You're sitting down. You're having a conversation about philosophy and the Michigan run and losing to Villanova and what's it been like being John Beilein. But you're John Beilein. You're sitting there, and many people know that, well, the perception of Gores is that he has no clue what the hell's going on. And so for me, the first question would be, who are you putting in place? How much power does Stefanski have? I need to know who's going to be running this thing. And if you hire a general manager, then I'm going to need like more years, because if you're going to get, some young cat in here and he's going to want his own guy, or if you're going to hire me before the general manager, how is this going to work? I'm going to need like a 6-year deal. I'm going to need a lot of money up front, or I'm going to need a lot of assurances that if I'm going to leave a cushy gig like Michigan and where I'm going to be the mayor of Ann Arbor, I'm going to need to know at least what is your thought process regarding the organization, because people think right now that Tom Gores has his head up his ass and doesn't know what he's doing. So if I'm John Beilein, I'm sitting there and I got a lot of questions, and I think it's something to talk about is, it's Tom Gores interviewing John Beilein, but it's also Beilein interviewing Tom Gores and wondering if
you're
it's
ever
a
going
fit.
for a job, you need to interview your future employer possibly.
What would you ask?
I think it's a great question. I really do. I think it's a great question. I'm glad you posted it on Twitter because I'll be interested to see what the feedback is. But if I'm John Beilein and I'm sitting down across from Tom Gores, I need to know what he wants to do with this team. What are you looking to do? Are you looking to just be slightly relevant and just have us maybe make the playoffs here and there? Or do you want to win a championship? Are you putting all your eggs in this basket? Are we going to go out there and we're going to do something? Or do you just kind of want to keep 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on the shore? Is that where we're at here? I need to know what you're going all in, where your all in point is. Do you know what I'm saying? What is your future? Where do you see the future of this team going? Are we going to be a contender from the East every single year? And are you going to allocate the money and the personnel? And are you going to give the control to whoever the general manager is? That'd be my next question is, who's my general manager? Are you going to give the control to the general manager, whoever that may be, and to myself to sit there and put this team in a position where we can compete with the LeBron James of the world, whether it be him with the Cleveland Cavaliers or if he moves to Philadelphia? What are we talking about here? Are we going to bring this franchise, which historically is one of the best franchises in all of the NBA? You have to realize how many teams have actually won a national championship in the NBA. And then look at how many teams have won more than one. There's very few teams who have done it more than once. And the Pistons are one of, I think it's 5 or 6 teams. Where are we going?
Exactly. Where are we going? And the obvious last question in this topic is, what's going on with the general manager?
Yeah.
They're going to potentially hire a coach ahead of a general manager, which seems all ass backwards.
It does. And I think it's Stefanski. I think Stefanski's going to be your new guy. And I think he is going to sit down with Tom Gores. He's going to be like, look, you need to make me general manager. I've hired this coach. Let me take the ball and run with it. It's where we're going to be. Does that not seem like how this is going to make sense? If you look at everything that Arn Tellem has done since he's come into this organization, it's been one chess piece move after another, and he's kind of been manipulating this thing. Now he's got his guy. Ed Stefanski's his guy. He's got him in position to make the hire for the coach. At some point, Stefanski's going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to be the general manager here, guys. I'm just going to take this all over. And that's what it's going to be. That's how I see this playing out, because you've heard no other names for a general manager. And if you look at the guys who they brought in for a general manager, they sat there, they had some temporary, like some real brief talks with what? Shane Battier, Trajan Langdon, and who else? They bring Tayshaun Prince in.
They've had preliminary talks with Tayshaun, but I think Trajan Langdon's getting more run right now as a candidate.
And how much are you hearing about that? You're hearing hardly anything about that right now. It really seems to me like Ed Stefanski's going to be the heavy hand in all of this. He's going to be the guy who's going to be pulling all the strings, and which leads me back to Dwayne Casey as being your head coach. I mean, do you think Langdon's going to be the guy who's going to be named general manager? You seem to be more hot and heavy on that than I do.
Yeah, I just news came down as we're talking. John Beilein took himself out of the running, so he probably already had the talk with Tom Gores, and it's been officially announced. John Beilein isn't going anywhere. He tweeted out, "I love the University of Michigan. I am excited about coaching our men's basketball team next season and the years to come. Let's hang some more banners at the greatest university in the world." That's the best way to do it. That's the best way to take your name out of the running. So that means he probably met with Tom Gores and was like, "Oh, hell no," or he didn't take the opportunity. I think he should have taken the opportunity. Interesting stuff there as it came down as we were recording. So John Beilein out. That means, you know what? It's done. Dwayne Casey's got to be the guy.
Or Dwayne Casey,
you can't go with a young cat, right?
I don't see them. It doesn't make sense for me. I wouldn't mind it because it's something different. It's something new. He seems like a guy who has really good control of the room, and he has a real good connection with younger players. I just think Dwayne Casey, it all points to Dwayne Casey. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I don't see a way that it doesn't. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Man, good talk. Everyone is kind of peeking into what the Pistons are doing, and with Beilein now taking his name out of the running, I think all signs would point to Dwayne Casey being the leader in the clubhouse. With that said, as our predictions may go, probably at the end of this recording, we'll announce that it's Udoka as the new Pistons coach. But either way, in the end, we both know tough times ahead. Hard times are ahead for the Detroit Pistons. They got to rebuild the confidence in the fan base. They got to do things right, and they have to kind of rebuild the public relations with their fan base, because there's a lot of empty seats. People's confidence in that organization right now is really low, and the tough part, and I think you and I will agree, is when you got big-time players like Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond, and Blake Griffin, and they're not likable, they're not universally respected by your fan base, you got a problem. A lot of people, when we talk about it just in glowing terms, saying, hey, Andre's kind of steadily improved his free throw shooting, they're like, he sucks, he's the worst, he's this, he's that. You get a sense strongly, these fans, the Detroit fans, don't want these athletes on the Detroit Pistons. And it's unfortunate, and that's a big problem, because if you don't got athletes on the team that you respect and like, how are you going to go out there and continue and run your franchise and sell tickets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk about college football. Big stuff ahead. I know you saw that picture. I know you saw the picture of the predominant elite football coach in college football, and the other guy was in the background. I want to talk about that next.
The other guy.
On the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio. And thank goodness we found Podomatic. Why do we use Podomatic? Every week we have great content, great guests. Imagine if we had a great interview and we sent them a link and it didn't work. That would make it really tough to grow your network, to book great guests. So if you're looking to start a brand new podcast, you got to have a great host site that can easily generate links so that your listeners across the country and even overseas can find it. And that's why we've had the level of success that we've had here at the network, is because we have a great host site. Doc and Jock, Vito, Jerry, Steve, all the hosts here are going to recommend one host site and one host site alone, Podomatic.com. All right, cuz. Thanks, everybody, for finding us across all the platforms you can download podcasts. The last few months have been amazing for the network. So I seen you trolling around on Twitter at your Twitter page at AdamRSTROZ. I love the fact that you and Michigan fans go back and forth. You have fun debates. But something that was really interesting was that you really are on board with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh getting an offensive coordinator, finally taking that away from Jim Harbaugh, maybe because of the fact that in the last couple years, there's been inconsistency with play calling. There's been challenges late in games where you go, maybe the decisions weren't great, maybe too many cooks in the kitchen. And you kind of have said, look, I'm so frustrated. I want Michigan to finally get a offensive coordinator, one guy to call the plays, make him in charge of that offense. And you referenced the success that Don Brown had with the defense being a significant piece for that defense. And so it seems like you weren't happy with Pep Hamilton having a passing game coordinator, having a system where, a play is called and then it filters through to Harbaugh and he makes the final decision. Why is it that you are so in favor of Harbaugh getting an offensive coordinator?
As a head coach, you've got so much stuff on your plate. You've got to know what the down and distance is. You've got to know what the personnel is that's on the field. You've got so many ancillary things. You've got to be thinking 3 and 4 steps ahead. Let your offensive coordinator just run the offense. You've got to worry about other things. You don't need to worry about necessarily the play calls. And on top of that, your first 25 plays are usually scripted anyways. So you sit there and you lay that out. Your first little bit of the game is already taken care of. You've got to you get kind of a flow. You know what's going on. You need to worry about what's going on with the other personnel that's on the team or that's on the field. So that way you can get your guys out there and get what you need to get done. You should have final say. You should have final say about the defense and you should have final say about the offense. I don't need the head coach, and in this case, Jim Harbaugh, being the offensive coordinator. I don't need some guy who's sitting up in a booth being like, hey, we need to run trips right, ZY, X, 4-5, and end around reverse. I don't need him radioing that down to Jim Harbaugh so you can be like, oh yeah, all right, so this is what we're going to do. Okay, mind you, all this is going on during a game. You've got your play clock going. Your play clock at any time could be ticking down to 10 or 12 seconds, and now you've got to relay this into your quarterback, who then has to relay this information to the players. It's just an extra step. You need to streamline the process. If me and you were sitting there, and then we brought Vito in, and we brought Jerry. We've actually done this. We've tried this. When we were working on coming up with a design for a logo for the Detroit Sports Podcast, I sat there, I came up with like 19 different designs, and I sent it to everybody. I said, hey, everybody take a vote. And it was a complete and utter cluster. It was a mess. It was absolutely horrible. In the end, we decided on that, and it was me and you who made the decision. Much easier when it's streamlined, yes or no? Do you agree?
I don't know. The Pistons have seemed to decide that they need consultant after consultant to make a decision.
And what a mess that is, right? No. Streamline it. Have 1 or 2 guys. That's all you need, right? One of those guys is your offensive coordinator. Let him call the plays in. If Harbaugh doesn't like the play, he can zero it out. The offensive coordinator has a backup play.
So what was the pushback you were getting? Because I seen you going back and forth with some supporters.
Basically, what was it? I can pull it up on my phone real quick. It was something to the effect of Jim Harbaugh is
the guy and they trust him.
Yeah, just because he's the head coach, he's the guy, he's going to have final say on the play. So what's the difference if he's the offensive coordinator and the head coach, or if you've got an offensive coordinator there? Which, again, to my point, he's got so many other things to do, and he's got so much other stuff that he has to be paying attention to. Why does he have to worry about calling the play?
It would seem that then people are really showing too much faith in Jim Harbaugh because
it's a lot.
In big games, the offense has really taken a crap.
It's sputtered.
Yeah, there's been times where, imagine this, okay?
Yeah.
It's raining outside, and you got a quarterback with a name maybe like O'Corn, and it's
I like what you're doing here. I see what you're doing.
I think that
Such a jerk.
You've handed the ball off and gotten 6 yards, and you've handed the ball off and gotten 5 yards. Would you then decide to pass the ball?
Well, let's throw him on soon, because that's a good idea.
I seem to recall that happening with that in place. So is that Jim Harbaugh? I would say maybe we need to rethink that and let him be the rah-rah guy and give these great motivational speakers and be the tour guide specialist that he's become now at the University of Michigan. I agree with you. I think an offensive coordinator would be fine at Michigan.
And look, there is no It's not a bad thing to take that away from Jim Harbaugh or for Jim Harbaugh to give that up. That's not a negative knock against him. It just states that you trust this guy to be in charge of your offense. You have a guy who you trust to be in charge of your defense. And look at how well it's worked out. Look at how awesome it's been for your defense. Your defense gets a ton of praise heaped up upon it all the time. And usually your offense is putting your defense in a bad spot. That's why your defense is giving up plays or why they're tired in the fourth quarter and they struggle. It's because your offense has put them in bad spots time and time again. Have an offensive coordinator. Have a guy who is in charge, who is in the room doing whatever he has to do with their quarterbacks, with your running backs, with your offensive line, with your wide receivers and your tight ends. Have a guy who is in charge of that personnel at all times. Jim Harbaugh does not need to be in charge of that personnel at all times. Do you know why? Because Jim Harbaugh has to be in charge of the entire football team at all times. So if you have a guy who can sit there and micromanage those guys, let him do that while Jim Harbaugh oversees the entire thing. It's like having a president of a company. A president of a company does not worry about what branch 6745, what employee X is doing there. He is worried about what the actual branch is doing. That's his concern. You know what I'm saying? Does this make sense? Jim Harbaugh is at this point worrying about what employee X is doing. No. What employee X's bottom line is, that's what Jim Harbaugh should be worried about, and how that correlates to what branch 675, whatever I said was. Do you know what I'm saying?
Understood.
It's just too many numbers now. But Jim Harbaugh does not need to sit there and be in charge of the offense. That's why you have a coordinator. There's nothing wrong with having an offensive coordinator. Look, one of the best coaches in college football has an offensive coordinator. Alabama has an offensive coordinator. And I understand that Nick Saban controls a lot of strings on both the offense and the defense, but he has an offensive coordinator. You can have an offensive coordinator, bro. You don't need 9 people wearing the offensive coordinator hat.
With that said, I referenced it earlier before the break. What did you make of that photo with Urban Meyer talking to youngsters, a camp, and he basically said that in big games, and he knew that Jim Harbaugh was looking over his shoulder. And he went out there and he said, look, in the biggest games, you got to deliver. And you knew that it was a great moment for him to sit up there and deliver that message. Exactly. He was poking the bear, but it just kind of showed how challenging it is right now for Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, because everybody that is ready to say, hey, show me something, is looking at Urban Meyer standing there in your house, basically, in Michigan, talking to kids, saying that, hey, my crew at the biggest moments handles it, whereas the guy in the background, and just kind of that picture was symbolic in nature. And so what was your reaction when you saw that?
Yeah, that was at I think it was Grand Valley's football camp that they were having. Look, man, I'm not going to sit here and defend Jim Harbaugh. I was excited when he came here. We're now into year 4. You've not won a big game. You've not really done anything of substance. It's been a lot of sizzle, no steak. So I applaud the balls and the brass that it takes for a guy like Urban Meyer to come into Michigan at a Grand Valley State football camp, which is like right down the road from Ann Arbor, and sit there and be so braggadocious and audacious. Audacious? That's the word, right? I'm using it correctly? Somebody check me. If not, whatever. To do what he does and to say things like that. I love it. I love it. Jim Harbaugh, go out there and do something. You've got to win, man. It's all about winning. You got to win. I love it. I think it's great. I mean, I think Urban Meyer's a prickly pear, if you can read between the lines there. I think he's kind of a jerk. I love it. I think it's great. You know what? And what could Jim Harbaugh do? What could he do? He can't do anything because he hasn't beaten Ohio State. He hasn't beat Urban Meyer. How many times has he beat Michigan State? Once? I mean,
one win against your rival.
You haven't done anything of substance. You haven't won anything. You haven't won nothing. So yeah, I think it's great. This year, he's got to win something. You've got to do something, and you've got this quarterback. Hey, oh my God, everybody just down on their knees for Shea Patterson. Oh, I love Shea Patterson. To the base. Thank you, Shea Patterson. All right. So Shea Patterson better do something, because if not, this whole Jim Harbaugh experience with Ward Manuel coming out and being like, oh, I want Jim Harbaugh and John Beilein to be here forever. I want them to end their careers here. I want them to stop coaching when they want to stop coaching. And I want it to be here at the greatest university in the world, the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, A squared. What? Yes. No. If you lose again and you do nothing of substance again this season, we really have to take a step back and we really have to reevaluate what we're doing and what's going on here.
Looking at some early predictions from Vegas, the number that they've set for both Michigan and Michigan State.
Hold on. Before we move on to that, and I don't mean to cut you off and I don't mean to derail the program, but you as a Michigan State fan, if Mark D'Antonio was to have another one of those years, like we'll just say last year, we'll say so it was absolutely brutal the year before. He has another mediocre year last year, comes into this year, and it's still kind of subpar. Is that seat not hot? Are you not calling for his job? Or are you like, you know what? This guy has done it before. He's gotten us to the college football playoff. Yeah, we got shelled by Alabama, and it's whatever, but he's done this before. We've seen the great things he can do. Let's give him another year. Are you saying let's give him 4 years of just being totally inadequate?
On the Motor City Sports Rant podcast, where we kind of delve into more Michigan State stuff every single Tuesday on this network, I've even questioned Tom Izzo, Mark D'Antonio, even after the 10-win year. We've asked the question about both coaches. Have they peaked? Can they get better? Is it time? Because there's a lot of great young offensive minds out there. And the reason why we started talking about D'Antonio was because of PJ Fleck and what he's got going on over there in Minnesota. We think maybe there's a good succession plan that maybe PJ at the time, his name was hot and bantied about. So we've asked, is Mark D'Antonio still right for the program with what's going on? Has he peaked? And we've asked that question. And if he does have a struggle, I've said that, in my opinion, is he's peaked. I think that he can get to division titles. He can have a run of success, 8, 9, 10 win years. But in my mind, the ultimate goal of a program is having a trajectory to win it all.
Right.
And with Mark D'Antonio and the way that that offense sometimes runs in big moments too, you question it and you say, does he have enough offensive genius to kind of go forward in what's going on with Alabama and Clemson and the SEC? What Michigan State's doing is a little bit old school in that smash mouth run the ball defense. I like that. It's championship material, but on the biggest stage, you also need a little bit of flash and pizzazz to compete with the big dogs, and I don't think D'Antonio is willing to adapt. I'm hoping.
So you demand more.
I demand more, of course.
Even when they're winning 10 games a season.
I want more.
And when they're getting to the college football playoff, you demand more.
I want more out of Michigan State. Go to the next level. Why can't Michigan State become Duke? Of course you say that.
Yeah.
You have to. If you think that way and you think better and best always, you have those thoughts.
See, so even Sparties want more, and Michigan can't even do what Michigan State has done. What does that tell you? Michigan fans, what does that tell you? Look at yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror. What have you become? What are you? You disgust me. All of you. You all disgust me. Demand more for your program. Demand more from this guy who's supposed to be your Lord and Savior. Jesus freaking Jim Harbaugh Christ. Demand more of this man. Want more. He doesn't have to be your offensive coordinator. There's no point for him to be your offensive coordinator. His job is to win big games against the best. And right now, in your conference, the best is Ohio State. It's Michigan State. It's Penn State. It's Wisconsin. Those are the programs that you need to beat regularly. You can't just beat them once every 3, 4, 5 years. No, you need to beat them consecutively 2, 3, 4 times in a row. Every now and then, you're allowed to slip up, but you need to beat them regularly. They need to be chasing you. Demand more.
So, Vegas, gambling, they have set Michigan State win total 9 games apiece. What do you think? I'm thinking for both right around there. That's a tough bet.
It is.
It's like, I got a good feeling.
You totally want to be like, push.
If any of the squads would go under, I would say Michigan, because a lot of their games are on the road. And I think Michigan State's going to push at 9. So I'm seeing 8 wins for Michigan right now, 9 wins for Michigan State. I think Michigan's going to have a really tough go of it with a lot of games on the road. And I think the marquee win for Michigan State, as always, will be the Michigan win at home. The tough game for Michigan State, the marquee game that will determine the level of success for the next season, will be the Ohio State game. Like everything else, the place setter in the Big Ten is Ohio State. You win there, you have an opportunity to meet your goals. If you don't, you'll fall by the wayside, and Urban will take his squad with a bunch of talent to heights, even at the top of college football. He could even get to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, for Michigan, you've got a really tough schedule this year. You're playing Wisconsin. You're going to Michigan State. You're then coming home to play Penn State. And that's just 3 games in a row right there. On top of that, at the end of the year, you got to go to Ohio State. So I think you're right. It's 8 wins seems probably about the way to be. So another one of those 8-5 seasons where I'm going to be tearing my hair out and I'm going to be wanting more from Jim Harbaugh and not going to be understanding.
I think they played 12, 8-4 in regular season.
Yeah, but they'll probably go and they'll
losing the bowl. Oh, you're giving them a bowl loss too?
Yeah.
Oh, look at you.
It's gonna be awful, dude.
Oh, 8-5 total.
Yeah.
Oh, I might go 9-4. Give them a bowl win. Come on now.
You got the bowl win, huh? Yeah, no, I'm thinking probably another one of those 8-5 types of seasons.
Oh man, that'd be so. If we're sitting here 8-5, I think the Band-Aid would be completely ripped off and everyone's gonna be pissed.
It's gonna be bad, dude.
You would then have to lose some support.
Yeah, there has to be something that'll have to change. I mean, and look, this is just early. I'm not even sure that Shea Patterson's the starting quarterback yet. We're not positive. So, look, I don't know how you sit there, you go on the road first week, you go to Notre Dame, you're going to beat Notre Dame, is that what you're telling me? And then you got that gauntlet of a stretch where you're going to bring Wisconsin in, go to MSU, and then you're going to bring in Penn State.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
It's going to be a fun ride this fall. I can't wait to get to the fall.
And then you've got Ohio State too. Come on, man. Come on. What are we talking here? Do you know? So I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it's going to be.
Yeah, buckle up.
Yeah,
buckle up. It's going to be fun times.
I think you're spot on with the 8 wins, and I just, depending on who they play in the bowl game, I'm giving them a loss. I don't know how this team can get up after going. It doesn't make sense to me at this time. For Michigan State, schedule's a little bit easier. You know, again, you avoid Wisconsin, which is nice. You don't really start the season off playing anybody of substance. You're going to bring Northwestern in, and that game's always a challenge. You're going to then travel to Penn State. So that's your big road game that you got going on. That's your only real big road game that you've got going on, is you have to travel to Penn State. So yeah, you've got a little bit of an easier schedule. Yeah, 9 wins, no problem. I could see 10. So for Michigan, I'm going to go under. For Michigan State, I'm going to go over. So I really see what happened last year kind of mirroring itself out, especially for their final records when all is said and done. I could see Michigan being 8-5, and I could see Michigan State being 10-3.
Woohoo! All right. Final timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Detroit Tigers, their draft pick, some interesting surprises in terms of performances this year, and we'll continue to see about our investment in terms of watching these Detroit Tigers. It's been a fun watch. The whole Rally Goose thing, the homestand in which they had a significant winning record. It was really good. It was a good couple weeks for the Detroit Tigers, but the real tests come up now when you play the Red Sox and the Indians. We'll talk baseball. Final segment, Doc and Jock Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for your continued support. We wouldn't be able to keep the lights on, the microphones hot here in our Sterling Heights studio without your support. Free and easy way to support us, go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can go find out what show airs when, see who is actually behind these microphones. If you're prone to shop online, just make one quick stop at DetroitSportsPodcast.com, bookmark the Amazon banner, and anytime you go to Amazon, kicks us back a little something. We greatly appreciate it. All the hosts here, we podcast because we're passionate about it, and we've been able to do it now for nearly 5 years because of your support, and we greatly appreciate it. Go visit DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Cuz, what'd you make of the whole Rally Goose thing? I'm interested to get your opinion on it. Vito called it gimmicky. It's kind of weird, seeing a bunch of old grown men, flapping their arms like a bird.
I love it, dude.
I loved it. I kind of liked it.
I thought it was great.
It was an interesting story, bred from, a goose, during a rain delay, flying into the scoreboard. It was a rallying cry, but I think there's a bunch of crotchety people, too, that follow us on Twitter sometimes, and that a lot of people message us and said,
dude,
this is
surly
corny
and salty.
Well, thank you to the several that bought our T-shirt. We greatly appreciate that as well.
We love you guys.
Thank you. I want to see that around.
Yes.
But Rally Goose was cool, right? It's a rallying cry.
I thought it was great. The story was incredible, right? I mean, it's a goose that gets on the field during a rain delay. They chase him off the field, and the goose, much like your Detroit Tigers, right? It's ascending, and then runs into one of those ribbon boards, one of those electronic scoreboards that are out there in was that right field or left field? It just bunks his head. And then they have to put up on the big screen, the goose is okay. The goose will live. It's going to be fine. But yeah, the goose can't even get out of the stadium. He just smacks his head.
It's just funny
I
to
love
me.
it.
It's
I
funny to
love
me
it.
anytime someone says the goose is loose, it just has a different connotation to me. And so people keep saying it. It's kind of funny.
I love it, man. Look, baseball is one of those games where it's a really long season.
Yeah, you got to have stuff to kind of rally around.
162 games, man.
And they've embraced it. They got their own goose. They made their own thing, and it's kind of cool. They've taken it on their road trip to Boston, and hopefully it helps them with some sort of rallying cry. And I like the fact that the crew is rallying around together, really indicating, look, we're not going to give up. We're a crew. It's the Rally Goose. Hashtag Rally Goose. Nothing wrong with it.
When you see little kids in the stands and they've got like a stuffed goose sitting on top of their head, that's awesome, dude.
Hashtag Rally Goose.
Hashtag Rally Goose. I love it.
Yeah, sports are supposed to be fun, like some people say, and let's keep it that way.
That's right. It's interesting to see, and it's something to get behind. I love it. I think it's great. I don't see why not.
All right, so draft time, a lot of people are into it. Now, look, I'm not a guy that's just going to go and invest heavily on researching all these cats in the minors. Do you know the Major League Baseball draft is damn near 50 rounds?
Yeah.
You and I have a chance to be drafted in the 50th round if you play baseball. But, the big thing is there's a lot of people that like it, and there's a whole field dedicated to it covering minor league action and things like that. There's a whole field. There's a lot of people that cover minor league stuff. But in terms of reading what was going on, I definitely knew the top 15, and that's the only thing I was willing to kind of read up on, because in the end, it's prospects, and prospects take a couple years. So I'm more invested in the current stuff going on, and that's just me, because guys like Casey Mize, guys like Roger Clemens' son, they're not going to make significant contributions to the Detroit Tigers for another 4 years.
Wait. Slow your roll. Casey Mize in 4 years?
I think significant.
You can see Casey Mize later this year. He'll probably get beat up, but you could probably see him next year.
I said
that's why he was the right
significant contribution.
He was the right pick.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm saying significant contributions. Most people are saying they're estimating 2020 is the time when maybe he'll get up here. And then you go, okay, usually most rookies don't just come in like Justin Verlander and light it up. And when you look at Casey Mize's negatives, he doesn't throw as hard. His stuff is not as good as Verlander. So when he comes in, I give him a year or two of like 9 or 11 wins, kind of feeling his way through.
So
I feel like his career will blossom from 24 to 30.
Let's have a conversation about this, okay? So you said his stuff isn't as hard as, say, Justin Verlander.
He was throwing 100 in college.
Right. Justin Verlander's a freak. Yeah. Going into the 7th inning after already sitting there taxing his arm with, 90 pitches, the guy was still able to dial it up to 100. So Justin Verlander was a freak. But this brings you to a question, or it brings me to a question that I want to ask you. So John Smoltz, never really the hardest thrower, but the guy was precise. He had precision. That guy was a pitcher, not a thrower. Justin Verlander, kind of the opposite. Threw really hard. He was a thrower. Could toss it as hard and as long as the day was bright.
And a competitive athlete.
Right. So what would you prefer? Would you prefer to have a pitcher, or would you prefer to have a thrower? In my case, I want a pitcher. I want a guy who I know who has really good mechanics, can sit there, and when he has to, he can kind of dial it up, give you 95, 96, 97, but he has an arsenal of pitches. Casey Mize right now, at Justin Verlander's level when he was here, didn't have this arsenal of pitches, didn't have as many tricks in the bag as Casey Mize does now. I much rather go with somebody like that, somebody who I know can sit there and has a cutter, a slider, a breaking ball, and has a fastball. Casey Mize has 4 pitches right now.
Exactly.
Going into the pros, just coming out of school.
But remember,
pitches.
Why do you think the Detroit Tigers right now have like 8 arms that people are talking about? Bo Burrows, Matt Manning, Faedo.
Because it's a crapshoot.
It's a crapshoot. So
total crapshoot.
To say that Casey Mize is going to be the guy because he's the number 1 pick tells me I just go with history. And history says that no number 1 pick, I believe, as a pitcher has made it to the Hall of Fame. And so it is a situation in which it's a crapshoot. It's tough. And remember, right now in Major League Baseball, the hitters are bigger, stronger, faster. So the guys that are throwing like 99, 100, guys like Shohei Ohtani can get guys out. Who struggles? Guys like Fires, who throw in the mid-90s, like 90 to 91, and they have to learn the art of pitching. So Casey Mize has stuff. He can get guys out, and he probably could come up and get guys out. But even Detroit Tigers, and from what my eyes have watched, remember Jeremy Bonderman?
Yes.
flash in the pan. I mean, the guy that struggled, had some success, but was in and out of the league, and then eventually let go from the Detroit Tigers. So I've seen several pitchers come in with this clout, like Casey Mize, and then, they even have a good couple starts. Look at your prize guy now that you got in a trade, Michael Fulmer. Year one, this is a badass mofo. Oh, Michael Fulmer, this is a Hall of Famer. I mean, we even sat here and were like, dude, try and get 18 players for him. Try and get as many you can.
And everybody.
Look what happened. Year two, he's struggling. Why? Because the art of film is so amazing. There's so much research that guys pretty much know what's coming when, based on if you do any research and homework as a hitter, you're going to know. And so for me, Casey Mize, I just need him to continue to develop it. And like you said, I need him to be able to become a good pitcher like Smoltz.
Do you think David Price will go in the Hall of Fame?
No.
Steven Strasburg?
Nope.
No? You don't see either one of those guys?
Not Price, not Strasburg.
All right, I'm sitting here on
and
I'm on the
when you talk about John Smoltz, if you look at his first couple year numbers, they were okay. I mean, he wasn't lining it up right away, and so you got to remember that significant contribution means that you can get 15 to 20 wins for a stretch of like 4 or 5 years. Look at Rick Porcello; he was the next up and coming thing. He didn't strike fire until he went to Boston, and look what happened to him last year. He was getting crunched. He went back to the lab, fixed it back up, and now he's contributing. And so with pitching, it's hard.
Let me ask you this. This is more of a draft philosophy then. Would you draft a position player? First of all, if you're the Tigers and you've got the number 1 overall pick, are you drafting a position player or are you drafting a pitcher? And like in this case, that pitcher's a guy like Casey Mize, right? He's super dominant in college. I mean, you can say super dominant. The guy is insane. He's like a 15-1 strikeout to walk ratio. That's crazy. 4 pitches, needs a little bit of refining, but is a guy who could probably, if you needed him to today, could come in, step in, and be a guy who would be maybe a rotational piece or a guy who could pitch out of your bullpen for you if you needed today.
My draft philosophy would be a position player.
Or would you go with a position player?
Position player, everyday player, and then you could also do what Houston did, where you draft a couple guys that develop in your system, and then when the time is right, you go out and you get your Justin Verlander.
You go sign your
stud. Get your stud to put you over the top. So you need basically the Tigers have a solid chance of having a couple of these guys develop. I mean, if you just get 2 of them, if you get Burrows and Manning or Manning and Faedo, if you get all 3, if you have a situation, if it hits, you have a situation where you can have that elusive Braves starting rotation that we all want to see.
So awesome.
That'd be nice to have all 5.
That'd be so awesome.
Burrows, Manning, Faedo, Mize. Now you're talking serious business. Then you throw in a veteran like a Matt Boyd, maybe a left-hander that can do some things. Real quickly, I don't want to touch on too much. A lot of people have been asking us, would you take the player that was accused of molesting his relative, 100-mile-an-hour lefty? Did you hear the story?
No.
There's a player in the draft. His stock has dropped way down. I think he was a victim of abuse himself.
Okay.
He vehemently denied it, but he went to court, and I think he pled out that he sexually molested his really young niece. And so he's a left-hander who throws 100 miles an hour. I can look up his name. But he's a strong, prominent lefty that throws around 100 miles an hour, I believe. So yeah, because Oregon State pitcher Luke Heimlich, who pleaded guilty in 2012 to molesting his niece, it's got solid stuff. People are like, whoa, this guy's got talent. And it has been talked about a little bit. Would you take a risk on him? I just flat out said no. But some people said, look, with stuff like that, you take a chance on him. And bringing a guy like that with maybe some troubles, I steer clear of that.
You look, there's always 2 sides to the story, right?
Yes.
This would be one of those situations where I would sit him down. I'd have a long conversation with him. I mean, you've got electric stuff, right? And we've talked before about it's not always about, look, a lot of times, a lot of these guys are crappy people, but they perform on the field. So dance for me, monkey, is kind of sometimes the thought process here.
Yeah, and he's a lefty arm. That's the big thing.
Throwing 100?
Yeah.
I would bring him in. I would have, like I said, I'd sit him down. I'd have a conversation. There'd be a lot of vetting that would have to go on. And if at that time, after vetting him and having a lot of conversations and talking to him, and I still kind of felt like my 51% was on his side, how many rounds did you say were in the Major League Baseball draft?
50.
Like 50? So what's it going to hurt to go and take this guy in one of those middle rounds? Do you know what I'm saying? Why not?
Okay.
Give him a shot. See what happens. That's
tough case, right?
Yeah.
Read up on it more.
I'm gonna have to. I didn't even hear about this.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So the draft is
Just
fun.
blew my mind, dude.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's an interesting story.
Very
dude.
interesting.
I feel like a 30 for 30 could be made off this.
So the draft is always fun to debate back and forth, and it's really fun to look at prospects. But currently, the Tigers are playing a good brand of baseball, led by Nick Castellanos and Matt Boyd. Some would say it could be looked at as surprising. Others will say Nick Castellanos is a guy that was highly touted, and it's nice to see. Good, we have another piece that can be traded for some nice prospects in return. Matt Boyd, it's nice to see him kind of rally, but again, he battles inconsistency sometimes when his stuff goes off, and since his injury kind of has been a little bit touched up, so it's always tough, too, in a long year. The Tigers are having so many injuries. It's just really tough, and Castellanos, I hope he stays hot so we can trade him.
So, well, here's the thing. Castellanos has been on record of saying, I want to stay through the rebuild. I want to be one of the pieces that you utilize to get us to the forward, to get us to help us move forward.
Yeah.
And this is something interesting about Matt Boyd. Do you remember when Max Scherzer was here? Mm-hmm. And now I'm not comparing Matt Boyd to Max Scherzer. Remember when Max Scherzer was here? He would have electric stuff. He'd be awesome. And you're always looking at me like, man, if he could just give you more than like 6 innings, and if he could just stay healthy, and if his mechanics didn't get all crazy and go out of whack every now and again, because Max Scherzer was notorious for coming up, giving you 3 good games, having 2 lousy ones, having to be sent down, get refined, get touched up, and then come back up from the minors, and then he would do it all over again. It would always be something with Max Scherzer, just go crazy and haywire with the guy. But he had stuff. He had something about him that you're just like, damn, if he could just get more consistent, just dial it in a little bit, give you more than just 6 solid innings, get you over the hump and get you into the 7th. I feel like Matt Boyd's on that track right now. I feel like Matt Boyd, you kind of started to see it a little bit last year. Last year, you're like, all right, I mean, he's got something. There's something there. He's got some stuff. You know, he's erratic at times.
Right.
You know, and now you're looking at Matt Boyd now, and same deal. He's got some stuff. At any given point, Matt Boyd's been your best pitcher this year over a guy like Michael Fulmer, a guy who won Rookie of the Year, a guy who we all touted as being the ace of the staff. Matt Boyd, to me, is kind of on that Max Scherzer track where going to give you some really good games, going to keep you in some games that you probably should have lost, but he's keeping you in them and he's fighting for you. You're just not doing your job and putting the numbers up on the board, but he's doing everything in his damn power to help you win this ball game. You're just not doing it. Then he's going to have other games where he goes out there and you're just like, what kind of hot garbage is he throwing over the plate right now?
Right.
Can we send him down? Can we get him like touched up and refined and retuned? And then can he come back up and do it again? Matt Boyd, to me, seems to be on that track. To me, Matt Boyd has been a huge surprise.
Yes.
Huge surprise. Nick Castellanos, not so much, because Nicky C, I feel like, is a guy who we've all expected this. We expected him to have a big bat. We expected him to be not so good in the field. In the end, I think Nick Castellanos will be your first baseman, while if Miguel Cabrera is still here, he'll be your DH. But Matt Boyd looks like he might be a stud right now.
And what's fun about talking about the Tigers is we're talking about the Tigers.
We're talking about Tigers.
29 wins, 33 losses. They got shelled by Boston, but Boston, oh my God, 41-42 win team. They are unbelievably built. Alex Cora walked into a situation in which money is aplenty. They got a great team. JD, I mean, what are you going to say? Words can't even describe it. I'm speechless talking about JD Martinez, already 20 home runs in almost 60 games. It's unbelievable. They're the class. So if you can get one win, I predicted the Matt Boyd start to be the only win, because look at the starting lineup. Look at the starting pitchers for the Tigers against Boston. You're going with Lewicki, Blaine Hardy, and Matt Boyd. Get the hell out of here. I'm like, I'm going 0-1 and 1 trying to be positive. So if Blaine Hardy, if you can do some things, please don't get shelled. And Matt Hardy, if the Tigers go down 0-2 in the series, forget it. You might get swept out of Boston. But it's nice to talk about them. I'm impressed. We're still invested. I'm watching. And it's nice to see a ball club rally, fight, win games at home in front of your home fans. And that's all we can ask for. A lot of good storylines. And I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here and say, oh my God, they're winning. I know my only goal for them was to get the number 1 pick again next year, but you can't really trade your, draft picks. So if you can really scout and utilize analytics to get good players, you can get good players in the top 10, top 15 as well. Keep at it. You never know. With the AL Central, you might even get to the playoffs with 80 wins. So keep it up. Yeah, who knows?
It's been a complete dumpster fire right now.
But 29-33, better than I expected, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this season, I wasn't expecting anything. I had no visions of grandeur for this team. So the fact that they're this competitive, the fact that they are a few games out of first place in the American League Central has me interested. And that is something that I did not think was going to be possible going into the season. I'm just kind of sitting back. I'm enjoying the ride, and wherever it takes us, it takes us. If for some reason Michael Fulmer's arm falls off, I'm not going to go crazy. The biggest issue I would have is, hey, why didn't you trade him before his arm fell off?
Exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying? So just sit back and enjoy this, Tiger fans. We're in the beginning of June, and we're talking about the Tigers and them having the possibility of leading the American League Central, something that neither you nor I even thought was a possibility going into this season.
Great podcast, man. We just turned on the microphone. 70 minutes just flew by. Always enjoy the conversation. Good news for you Michigan haters that wanted John Beilein back. He's coming back, looking like he's going to get a little bit more money with an extension, and looks like he had the opportunity to at least showcase himself a little bit. But he's coming back to Michigan. Good for you guys. It's always fun now to talk football and to kind of poke and prod and see where expectations lie with Michigan and Michigan State. It'll be fun. As we approach the 2018 season, I can't wait for the fall. And because we've yet to even chomp into the Detroit Lions, man, so much. That's why I love doing this podcast. That's why we've recorded almost 1,000 podcasts combined on the network. It's fun, and thankful that you're here. Good stuff as always. Thank you so much.
Love this podcast. Let's go DSP. Daddy likes.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.